David and Absalom. In all Israel, there was no handsomer man than Absalom, the king's favorite son. From the sole of his foot to the crown of his head, there was no blemish in him. He cut his hair every year when it became too heavy for his head, and his hair weighed 200 shekels on the king's scales. And King David loved Absalom very dearly. Absalom had chariots and horses and 50 men to attend him. He would rise early in the morning and wait at the gate near the place of judgment. And if anybody came with a case to lay before the king, Absalom would call unto him and ask where he came from. If the man said that he was an Israelite, Absalom would say, "You are certainly in the right, but there is nobody here to represent you. If I were judge, any man could come to me with his cause, and I would do him justice." If any man came to bow down to Absalom, he would have none of it, but took him by the hand and kissed him. And so Absalom stole the hearts of the men of Israel. One day he said to the king, "Let me go to Hebron to fulfill a vow which I made to the Lord while I was in Syria." King David said, "Go in peace." So Absalom went to Hebron, and he sent spies throughout all the tribes of Israel, saying, "As soon as you hear the sound of a trumpet, then you must proclaim that Absalom rules in Hebron." Absalom had with him 200 men from Jerusalem who knew nothing of the conspiracy, and more people turned to Absalom. Then a messenger came to David and warned him, and he said to all his servants, "We must flee, or otherwise we shall not be able to escape from Absalom." So he fled from Jerusalem with all his household, but the ark of the Lord and Zadok, the priest, remained in the city. So there was war between David and his son Absalom. David divided his army in 3 parts, and he was prepared to go forth with it. But his people said, "You must not go forth, for nobody cares about us except you. You are worth 10,000 of us, so it is better that you should lead us from inside the city." David said, "I will do whatever you think is best." He stood by the gate, and the people came out by the hundreds and thousands. He spoke to his commanders, Joab and Abishai and Ittai, and said, "Deal gently for my sake with the young man Absalom." And all the people heard what he said about Absalom. A great battle was fought in the wood of Ephraim, and the people of Israel were defeated by the armies of David, and 20,000 men were killed. It's a big battle, huh? Absalom met the servants of David. He was riding a horse, and the horse went under a great oak, and Absalom's head was caught up in the thick burrows of the oak, so that he dangled between heaven and earth, and his horse galloped away from beneath him. A man saw him there and told Joab, saying, "I've seen Absalom hanging in an oak tree." And Joab said, "Since you saw him, why did you not strike him to the ground?" "I would have given you 10 shekels of silver." And the man said, "Not for 1,000 shekels of silver would I raise my hand against the king's son, for I have heard the king telling you and Abishai and Ittai not to touch the young man Absalom. It would have been as much as my life was worth, for nothing can be hidden from the king, and you yourself would have blamed me." "I cannot tarry thus with you," said Joab. He took 3 darts in his hand and thrust them into the heart of Absalom, who was still alive and hanging from the oak. And 10 of Joab's young men surrounded Absalom and stabbed him to death. Here's a picture of Absalom getting hung up in the tree. See how his head got caught in some thick area, and then the horse just kept going. So he was hung up in a tree, got caught. David sat between the 2 gates, and the watchman went up to the roof over the gate by the wall, and saw a man running towards the city. The watchman told the king, and the king said, "If he is alone, he must be coming with news." Then the watchman saw another man, and he said to the king, "The first man runs very like Ahimaaz, the son of Zadok." And the king said, "He is a good man. He will be coming with good news." Ahimaaz called to the king and said, "All is well." And he fell on his face before the king and said, "Blessed be the Lord God, which he has served us, the men who lifted their hand against the Lord the king." And the king said, "Is the young man Absalom safe?" And Ahimaaz said, "That when Joab sent me and the other messenger, everything was in great confusion, and I do not know what is happening." The king said, "Go and stand aside." Then the other messenger, Cushi, arrived, and he said, "News, my lord king, the Lord has avenged you. The Lord has avenged you on those who rebelled against you." And the king said to Cushi, "Is the young man Absalom safe?" And Cushi said, "May the enemies of my lord the king and all that seek to harm you be as Absalom is now." The king was greatly distressed, and he went up to the chamber over the gate, weeping and saying, "Oh, my son Absalom, my son Absalom. Would God I had died for you, O Absalom, my son, my son." Sounds like he's pretty sad about his son passing away, huh?
Yeah.
Now King David was old and stricken in years. They wrapped him in clothes, but he lost strength daily. The end of his life drew near, and he knew that he must die. He sent for his son Solomon. And charged him, saying, "I go the way of all the earth. Therefore you must be strong and show yourself to be a man. Keep the commandments of the Lord your God and walk in his ways. Obey his statutes and abide by his word, and it is written in the law of Moses. Then the Lord will fulfill his promises that he made to me, saying, if thy children take heed to their way, and walk before me in truth with all their heart and all their soul, there shall always be male children for the throne of Israel. You know what I have endured. Be wise, therefore, in all that you do." And in the last words to the people, David spoke to the qualities of kingship in these words. "The God of Israel spoke to me, saying, He that ruleth over men must be just, ruling in the fear of God. And he shall be as the light of the morning and when the sun rises, as a morning without clouds, as tender grass springing out of the earth, in clear sunshine after rain." So David slept with his fathers, and he was buried in the city of David, after reigning over Israel for 40 years, 7 years in Hebron and 13 years in Jerusalem. And Solomon sat on the throne of David, his father, and ruled over his kingdom.